Hello, hello. Welcome everyone to another AZ Ray video. Today I am honored to have an amazing guest at my side. I have Mr. Professor Ioannis Tsioulakis. Did I say that right? And he has a ethnomusicology background. He also is a taught music. He's also involved in music. He makes music on his own right. So I thought he was very qualified for this conversation as we dissect and understand Taylor Swift and Taylor Swift lore. It's very fascinating that she has become the most successful woman in music today, and she surpassed Rihanna in a recent stat. I know 2025 is still early in this year, in the time of this recording. Will somebody beat her? I'm not sure. I do like Beyonce, so I wouldn't mind if Beyonce beat her. But focusing on the conversation here, thanks for your time, Giannis. Thank you.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me. I'm not a huge connoisseur of Taylor Swift's music, but we can discuss the kind of the wider issues around it for sure.
Same. Um, I've mentioned this earlier, like previous chats. Like I grew up with her. I knew like Love Story or You Belong with Me. Like I was aware of these songs. I was like, oh, okay, all right, I get it. But I just feel like she exploded out of nowhere, it's like she's everywhere. Like I go to get some like petrol or some gas, and she's in a magazine. I go to a bookstore, and there's like 5 or 6 different books about her. And then the fact that I believe it's Harvard that even has like a class about her. I'm like, okay, like what just happened here? Within the last 8 years, like she exploded, and and how did that happen? So yeah, the reason why I wanted to talk to you, Professor Giannis, is I wanted to just kind of give the audience an idea and the value of ethnomusicology. So, would you mind just kind of giving the audience just kind of a general definition of what ethnomusicology is and how in its value to this like subject matter, just in general?
Yeah, for sure. So ethnomusicology or anthropology of music, as it's called in other quarters, I suppose, of academia, is essentially the study of music from a cultural, social perspective. So what we do as ethnomusicologists is less sort of analyze the music per se. So we don't necessarily dissect the music and break it down into kind of its score and its harmony and its instruments and so on, even though that is very often part of what we do. But mostly we try to see it from a cultural perspective, from a social perspective, see how it connects to other processes that take place in society. The moment where music is produced, how it connects to things like, politics or religion or human behavior or, fandom, which is, I suppose, relates very much to Taylor Swift here. So yeah, what we try to do as ethnomusicologists is situate music in its historical, cultural, social context, and so on, and see what it tells us really about the humans who produce and listen to it. It's, I think, sort of an easy definition of the field.
No, thank you for your explanation. Yeah, music and culture, it definitely seems like a very connected relationship. I know you've have different articles regarding different regions of the world that you've worked on and things with Greece and different things how like affects in the folklore. And it might sound peculiar for an audience member where it's like, okay, like it's easy to get when we're talking about an ancient place to think of an ancient culture, or to even maybe, or it's easier for the person to put on their hat, right? But to do something with the current artist, it's a little different, right? It's like to your earlier point, popular music is a it's I guess it's a different animal, right? When you have to analyze it on a ethnomusicology scale, right?
Yeah, absolutely, very true. And all of my research and most of my teaching has been on popular music. That's what interests me is contemporary popular music. And as you said, most of my research has been in Greece, where I've been working predominantly with kind of professional musicians, mainly instrumentalists, so the people who play, the guitars and bass and drums and keyboards behind the bigger stars, the Greek Taylor Swifts, in a way. So I've been doing research with those people and trying to see what their relationship is with the music industry, how they make a living. So it is very much kind of a study of the music industry from the point of view of professionals, the market, and so on. So these are the kinds of questions that usually interest me in my own research. Yeah.
No, thank you so much for expanding, and well, we'll definitely put any articles or anything that you want to put like in the description as well. Because there's a lot of meat and potatoes. That's what you just said. You just dropped a giant nugget. No, absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, as far as applying it back to like Taylor Swift's unique culture, and to your point, right? When you have people that are composing or like street performers or performing at different pubs, small venues, and they're like grassroots and they quote unquote get some kind of break, right? Taylor Swift has a similar story, right? You know, growing up in like Tennessee and whatnot. I'm not going to act like I am a expert by any means. Just this is just based on the beginning of my journey when it comes to her research and stuff, and I see that she grew up in some kind of like tree farm where they gave away different trees or something like that. And on the side, she was playing music, and then just kind of slowly but surely got discovered and got the push. And here she is today, right? And I'm sure I can only imagine how fascinating it is to see that growth as a researcher, right? And you're supposed to be a fly on the wall, right? I can only imagine with with your research talking about, different things in popular music and how it's like when you see the growth, when you see the explosion. And I know the various areas that you have visited or inhabited, their music is a big thing within the culture, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I've seen similar examples of again, kind of people making it out of, against all odds in a sense, out of nowhere. And I think that that is more of a typical story, really, of the big star in the music industry, is that usually these are people who were not necessarily conditioned from the beginning to make it as stars. You have some examples of what we call nepo babies that came out of other stars that were their children and so on. But most of the people were discovered and worked very hard to be where they are, because of something that was very unique about them, and appealed to a lot of audiences and to the music industry stakeholders and so on. And that can be, in general, we call that talent, but it can be talent in a lot of different ways. It's not necessarily exactly about songwriting or about the talent of playing an instrument, or having a beautiful voice. It might be a combination of those things. Also about how you look on stage and off stage, the kinds of charisma that you might carry with you. So there's a lot of different factors that make something to be so unique that it sells millions and becomes so popular. So I suppose the question for me always when we're talking about a megastar is, what is it that made them so, and how can we explain it? Can we explain it at all? And how can we really see what appeals to people?
No, that's wow. Yeah, that's a very tricky question. And no, of course, the X factor, right? Or the charisma, as you said as well. It's tricky too. And I don't want to bring this up, but I would be invalid anthropologist if I don't, because as you said, right? All these different levels, often the cases like apply more, right? We have like different artists. If we go to like past like eras, like Diana Ross or Whitney Houston, right? And being people of color, and it was a little bit more of unnecessary extra things to climb. And then you have like you have a you have other examples too. Oh shoot, I'm blanking out on her name. Oh, Etta James. Alas, right? And it's like she's not your traditional quote unquote soul pop star, but she had to climb a little longer and undeniable. And although we can't say that Taylor Swift was dealt with nepotism, but it would be, I guess, wrong on my part if we don't talk about some of the privilege and benefits that she has compared to other people. And it's not even just to pick on her just because she's from Tennessee and she's from a big country like the U.S., right? But I'm sure you dealt with it or you've seen it on a research base where you see sometimes like the most talented person doesn't make it to the show, right? I am a big music person, but I'm a martial arts person, and I guess I am the Bueno martial arts shirt. I didn't mean to, but the best fighter isn't always in the ring or in the cage or the pit or whatever, karate, whatever discipline it is, right? There's so many other layers that get people to the show. So could you explain on that? And yeah, I didn't want to talk about the privilege thing, but I think it'd be wrong not to on some level, right?
Yeah, I think the privilege thing is a big aspect of it. I think the music industry is a bit of an exception compared to other kind of parts of the economy where the privilege can be defined in different ways, and it's not necessarily economic privilege or privilege that comes from ethnicity and so on. There are, as you say, there's a lot more barriers when you come to people who face traditionally barriers in society as well, based on ethnicity, race, gender, age, and all of that. Appearance plays a huge role. And again, the typical thing people say is, good people who don't look as good with kind of mainstream standards, who made it back in the, say, 1920s and 1930s, would they be making it in equal terms, after the 1980s, when the visual became such a big aspect? And I hear that argument, but again, I truly think that it's something more holistic going on there. No one makes it just because of the way they look or just because of the way they sound, their voice, and so on. There's a huge kind of combination of factors that I think is unpredictable as well to some extent, and even unpredictable on the level of record company executives and so on, who can't necessarily predict what will become successful or not. So yes, Taylor Swift is an example of someone who you would look at and say, okay, I can also see it. There's nothing peculiar about her being successful. She's beautiful, white, talented, a good voice, a good dancer, and so on. So she has a lot of the whole package. So maybe she's not an exception in that kind of rule. But there's a lot of other people who make it also, and you think, okay, I wonder why and how. So it is a very interesting sort of discussion to have, I think. Yeah.
No, yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you for touching about it. And yeah, because right, as we like dissect and examine things, right, I'm already trying to think of the potential like rebuttals or what people are already thinking or probably processing. So no, thank you for your thoughtful response. And yeah, but overall, right, talent creates longevity, right? And she's still around for some reason. But I don't mean that like, oh, like not for some mysterious reason, but I mean like she's here for a reason. Maybe let me rephrase that. She's here for a reason, and she's still here. And yeah, it says something. Longevity is a very hard thing to do, like in any industry. And since I think we're essentially talking about it, right, and in a different way, could you while using Taylor Swift or some kind of different example, if you don't mind, Giannis, could you explain like the topic of like musicality and quality? Because I think that's on some level what we're kind of touching on, but just to kind of give the audience like a better idea of some of the ethnographic instruments and tools that are essential to use as a researcher when you're doing these kind of analysis.
Yeah. It's a really good question, a tricky one. Um, the question of quality is interesting from an ethnomusicological perspective, because what we tend not to do is try to judge quality by any sort of objective metrics or standards, right? Music analysis, for example, does a lot of that, and usually focusing on Western art music, classical music, kind of trying to explain why this particular piece of work that is usually kind of the genius composer and so on is that great, by analyzing the harmony and so on, the techniques that are used there. And we don't do that as ethnomusicologists. What we try to do is really kind of analyze music, well, as I said, in its cultural context, but also by using the sort of standards and criteria that people who actually love that music use. So kind of trying to analyze really why it appeals to the people that it does appeal to. So that introduces the whole kind of discussion of fandom, for example. So why do people become fans, and who do they become fans of? And what does that tell us again about the artist, about the cultural context, and so on. So coming to Taylor Swift's, I think, appeal and quality, and again, I'm kind of uncomfortable with the term quality, but in that context, let's use it to say, the value, I suppose, of her contribution, which again, I don't think is just purely musical. It goes to a lot of other levels. I think the appeal is given, right? So it's not for me as an ethnomusicologist or for anybody else who does music analysis to say, oh, she shouldn't be famous, she's not good enough. That is already proven. It's a given that she is good enough to become famous. So the question then is, what is it that she's good at, and what is it that her music really offers? And I think once you come to this, you need to see, as you said, the longevity is one part of it. The transformations are another big part of it as well. The fact that she became in the past few years a symbol of something, and she's a symbol of really kind of that empowerment that came from her career. The way that, and people can look that up and find the exact details, but the whole trajectory of her career the past few years is a trajectory of becoming independent and becoming empowered through that, breaking away from companies that were exploiting her and specific people that were exploiting her music, and making profits out of her, and breaking with them and creating a new path for herself, the whole Taylor's version kind of thing, that is her owning her music, producing it in her own terms, and then becoming the main person who controls that and has power over it. So I think that before we even get to the music, I think that part has been extremely inspiring for people. The whole kind of breaking from the music industry and becoming sort of an artist that has control over herself. So I think that is a big part of the appeal. And as you said, the way that she becomes more and more relevant and more famous, I think has a lot to do with that kind of persona that she has been able to put across.
No, no, absolutely right, and like redemption, and she's reclaimed a lot. And unfortunately, she was also like the victim of different like sexual assaults things and trials. And to your point, the abuse in the industry, like financially, but also like literal and physical, right? So she does represent a certain demographic. She is an LGBTQ non-binary ally as well. So no, I definitely completely get your point. Oh, thank you for your thoughtful response. Redemption definitely is important, and she definitely represents some of the struggles that are like in like what happens to be like in a woman in the industry and being like a young woman in the industry. Could you expand a little bit more on musicality? I know it's a hard question, and I know you touched about quality too, because it's connected and it's tricky, right? Because we're both being objective in this because we both are admitting from the beginning that we're not the biggest Taylor Swift fans, but just the kind of idea, or just to kind of have an idea of um, what's happening exactly. And if it's too hard to apply to Taylor Swift, just kind of like a general understanding of what like musicality
Yeah.
is for the
So
audience.
I think musicality again is and a very multifaceted sort of term, and it includes a lot of different things. Some of them are kind of very in the core of what is music, and some of them are a little bit more in the periphery. But for me, musicality is a combination of a lot of different things. So it has in it, the core of a song, that is in its most bare bone structure, the melody and the harmony behind it. But then what you hear as a final result also is a result of music production and instrumentation, and the sound engineering and mixing. The lyrics have a huge part to play in this, and how they become um, evocative and emotive for people who listen to it. um, Again, we can't forget the fact that a lot of people today consume music together with video, so the visual aspect cannot be divorced from the musicality aspect of things. So it's very hard to kind of take them apart and see them in isolation. But when it comes specifically to musicality, I think Taylor Swift's appeal has to do very much with eclecticism and the move between different kinds of genres that she seems to be very comfortable with. So from her origins that were more kind of that, suppose, country pop at the beginning, but then moving into kind of more other types of dance pop and electronica, even in her more recent albums, kind of more alternative kind of genres come into it as well. So she's extremely versatile. Her voice is versatile as well. She can sing a lot of different genres and she can do that well. And then together with the kind of the stage persona that she can again move between something that is more kind of dancey and pop in that kind of sense to something that is more acoustic and relies more on the melody and the kind of bare instrumentation and so on. She has range, so I think that is a big appeal there. And the lyrics I think is something that mostly touches people and people of a kind of specific demographic, I suppose, as well. The way that I think she can relate to experiences of her key demographic, as well through her lyrics that are not her lyrics are original. They're very innovative. They're very different than the typical sort of catchy pop song that you would hear otherwise. So I think she has evolved into an artist that she can express kind of ideas through lyrics that are yeah, quite original, poetic, and cryptic in very and hiding stories behind them. I think there's a lot of storytelling and narrative in what she does that relates to her own personal experience, and people can sort of consume that in its own context. So I think all those different elements, I mean, conspire together to make the sort of the affect that her music can carry.
Interesting. Wow, that was beautiful, insightful, and now, and based on your response, it's like, oh, okay, that Harvard class is making sense now. I guess, through my ignorance, but I definitely, yeah, I have. No, I'm definitely taking in everything that you're saying, especially when you're talking about like the whole musical and artistic and creative process. And something that I found out by doing research that I guess she made a short film that got like pretty good reviews that I'm gonna probably check out too. But it's very connected because I believe she also directed some of her own videos. And to your point, right? The creative process and to try to find a medium for the audience to kind of receive it, whether it's visual, whether it's audio, and through the intimacy of lyrics, right? And then you said like core of a song. Man, that's and I'm sure you could speak to that even aside from like your ethnomusicology and anthropology background, but just as like someone involved in music and as a music teacher, right? The chorus, like, yeah, it's kind of like I don't like it's metaphysical almost. Like there's no like, well, what do you even call that, right? What do you even, right?
Yeah,
Whatever your belief system is.
it's hard to explain, but I think I mean what I mean by the core of a song is that there are songs out there within popular music that you could pare them down to play them on a guitar and a voice and just simply play the chords and the melody, and you can already see why this song is a very good song, right? And that doesn't work for everything. And it's not a quality judgment for me. It's not to say that if a pop song you doesn't sound nice if you just play it on the piano and sing it or on the guitar and sing it, it means that it's not a good song, right? Because a lot of the beauty of popular music is in the production, I think. In the samples that are being used and the different sort of sounds that are produced in different technological ways. I think that is a key part of popular music. So I'm not trying to diminish that, but I think a lot of Taylor Swift songs can sound very nice on just a guitar and voice, and I think that's very possibly how they have been composed from the start. Which is a different type of composition, but I think that appeals to people. The simplicity of a form in a song is something that appeals. Now, I'm starting to sound like a major Taylor Swift fan, which, as I said from the start, I'm not. But that's a kind of a personal thing. It's not a reflection on the value of the music. It's just sort of doesn't necessarily resonate with my own sort of upbringing and background. But that's not. But I think I can still appreciate to a great extent why it appeals to people.
No, right. No, right. And you hit the nail on the head. That's the objective with these series of videos and conversations. And it's not necessarily to convert people, right? And I'm not even trying to necessarily be converted, but it's just to kind of understand and just to kind of appreciate and just to kind of have just like a deeper lens. But I completely also understand the trickiness of trying to elaborate and explain like the core of a song, musicality, and just like the bigger themes of it because it's an audio thing, right? And right now we're talking on a visual medium, and if you guys are listening to this on an audio feed, right, you're still listening to it. But how do you explain like the listening process? It's complex, right? And like how sounds and pitches and tones and yeah, that's it's absolutely it's an art, right? Producers and composers deserve a lot of credit for creating, combining these different sounds and pitches and making them together, and then it just becomes a harmonious melody, or however you want to frame it, right? But to explain the process, it's one of those things, right? It's like similar to when people look at like different painters, right? When you look at like something from like Van Gogh or like Picasso or just any Frida Kahlo, different painters, right? And how can you interpret, or even modern art, right? It gets even a little bit more trickier with like Matisse or something with like someone more modern in French, and it's like, oh, this is art, right? And I completely understand what you're saying too, but I think you also got to the crux of it. It's just like the appreciation of the music and the process, right? And I think you have a unique lens because you have experience on each level when it comes to music, right?
Yeah. I suppose I do, and I have that experience of kind of producing music in the studio and analyzing it in different sort of contexts. And I think what it comes to at the end is sort of the types of resonance that music can create with people. And it's not universal by any means. Those resonances of what we like and we don't like are not really logical processes where we hear something and then we evaluate based on specific criteria and we decide that we like something or not. There's a much more sort of affective and emotive sort of perception process there, where our own emotions are being filtered, our own experiences, the connotations that we have that might be social and cultural and historical and so on, and where we come from and who we've associated with. All these are filtered through our kind of experience of a piece of music, right? So when we're listening to that, it resonates with us in different ways, and it produces sort of reactions where we decide that we like something or don't like. And sometimes we like something and we don't want to admit that we like it. There is that part of it. Or we really try very hard to like something because we think we should like it, and our ears and our perception don't work like that. And it's just a testament to there's a lot of processes there going on that are cognitive and psychological and cultural and so on, and they're very hard to separate from one another.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, thank you again for taking the time, Giannis. And that was very well said because music, like culture, like Taylor Swift, it's very multi-layered, right? There's a lot to it. And yeah, no, thank you again. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
thank
I will
you.
see.
It's been great talking about it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, well, I'll see how the what ends up becoming the conclusion to my Taylor Swift lore. But this was an amazing start, and yeah, I hope to better understand. And yeah, thanks again,
Yeah.
Ioannis Tsioulakis.